Alright guys, seeing as how the Fiero is in for service today, I brought it in just for an oil change and to give it a once over since the car has barely been out within the last 6-7 months. I figure I'll give you another tour of what makes the 1988 Fiero different from every other year. So why don't we get into it and I'll give you guys a look. The significant difference having to do with the Fiero suspension are the wheels, as for the first time in 1988 the Fiero's wheels are staggered, the front being a 6-inch wide rim, as we discussed previously, being due to the wheels being pushed out a little further and the track being widened in the front, while the rears are still the standard 7-inch wide rim. So one of the easiest visual clues as to whether a car is a 1988 Fiero, if the wheels haven't been swapped, are that the front wheels are shallower or have a wider offset, have a less, let me just rephrase that. The front wheels don't have as deep a lip as the rears, as you can see here, which also led to the Fiero in 1988 having staggered tires, the rears being 215/60/15 and the fronts 205/60/15. All of this is as a result of the changes made in the Fiero suspension. Alright, now we're going to talk about some of the major design changes for the 1988 Fiero in the rear suspension. As you can see, one of the major changes is that there is no singular control arm on the 1988 for the rear suspension. No ball joints, nothing. What they did was they included the one control arm, the tie rod, which is now ahead of the control arm, not behind like in the older car, and a rear trailing link. This is part of the completely redesigned suspension for the 1988 system, which is very similar to designs used by Lotus at the time, which may have attributed to the rumor that Lotus, at least in part, was responsible for this design. If that's true, I really don't know. But this design was supposed to lead to a smoother ride, better handling and performance, and overall improvement in the Fiero for 1988. It also includes, if we can get a look at it here, a rear sway bar, which was a first for the car, factory installed sway bar. And we can see the sway bar end link there, which no other Fiero for any other year included a rear sway bar in any of the handling packages. And again, this is what led to some of the rumors that this was a Lotus, at least a Lotus inspired suspension, if not designed. We also have a completely redesigned subframe, parking brake assembly, and completely new braking system for the 1988 Fiero. Here I'm giving you a better look at the entire rear suspension of the Fiero, including the cradle, where you can see the two struts, which are moved further inboard, so that your engine compartment is actually a little bit smaller than the older Fieros. The control arm, as we spoke about earlier, the tie rod, which is anchored solidly to the chassis. You can see the sway bar, which is the only year that they came from the factory with a sway bar, the end links, and then the trailing links. One thing you can also take note of is that this subframe is mounted solidly to the chassis, whereas other Fieros had bushings There are no bushings at the 4 mounting points to the chassis of the car. At the forward part of the subframe, we have horizontal bolts, which give you a swivel point for the subframe itself. And at the rear, we have vertical bolts, which go right up into the chassis. So in theory, you would unbolt the suspension, unbolt the rear bolts, and swing the entire subframe down to perform any service on the vehicle that required that. Alright guys, so there we have it. That's a quick overview on everything, or most of what makes the rear suspension of the Pontiac Fiero for 1988 very different from every year that came before it. There is a lot more to cover in this series, as we'll be looking at the braking system, the spindles, the way the wheels are mounted. Everything's a little bit different. And then we'll be looking at the engine and a couple of other bits and pieces here that make it a little bit different. But that covers the gist of what you need to know in the first episode about the front, and now in the second episode about the rear. So stay tuned. Remember, like and subscribe to keep updated on when new episodes come up. And you guys will learn everything you ever wanted to know or didn't about the 1988 Pontiac Fiero. Alright guys, I will see you on the next one.